All right. Mic check here. Okay. First stream back since my little vacation. I apologize, my throat's a little bit jacked up. Lost my voice a bit over the weekend. Still recovering, but it's chill. Put on some lo-fi. All right, let me give a couple minutes for people to trickle in. It's going to be a fairly short stream today overall. Just because I have... Hey, what's up, Sergio? Yeah, this specifically for you. Because I know you can't always get in here at this time, so wanted to make it accessible for some of my friends in EU. Not the Twitter reference title. I mean, sort of. I mean, I was going to do a Stoicism talk today anyway, but it was a good opportunity to do something like this. Hey, what's up, Tea Leaf? I literally just said I did it for EU fans. So yeah, I'm good. How are you? Appreciate you dropping by again. Yeah, I was telling Sergio, I feel bad always doing them at night here because I know you guys can't watch as well. So, but yeah, how are you doing? Yeah, I was thinking about it. I was gonna do a stream today anyway because of just that's kind of what I planned after the weekend. I was like, oh, I'll stream again on Monday or Tuesday. But given kind of today's random viral tweet that blew up, like I actually did not think I was kind of just making a joke. And then I was like, dude, this thing's almost at 10,000 likes. That's insane. And it's kind of a joke. The way I even worded it is kind of a joke. But like, I don't think the issue here and the reason that this is worthy of discussion is not anything to do with what Carlos said, right? Ocelot said, he dropped the N word or whatever, like a variation on it, a colloquialism. I didn't think that was the big deal. I think the conversation that's gotten brought up because of it is obviously more related to the Andrew Tate stuff and related more to people's response towards cancel culture, right? Or canceling of people. So I don't really want to dive too much into the definition of cancel culture, whether or not it's good. That's not really the issue. The issue is more so what are ways that especially men, but in general people are actually evaluating personalities and determining who's a good role model or figure to follow. You're doing fine, pretty hyped. Your new PC is arriving. Awesome. That's a good feeling. I'll eventually have to get a new PC as well, but not for a while. I built this one like 3 years ago. Well, I didn't build it. My friend built it for me, but it's doing pretty well. So can't really complain. I might need to upgrade the RAM. That's the only thing I probably need to do at some point, but it works. Yeah. So I wanted to talk more about, positive role models in general and what I think about masculinity and how we can be better men in society without crossing the line into becoming sort of that toxic, I hate using even the word toxic. It's kind of oversaid, right? Overstated, but a hyperbole of what a man should be, an exaggeration, right? And I think that's what a lot of men struggle with, is that they feel like in order to be a man, you have to be the epitome of what we consider manly in all things. You have to be tall and strong and never have emotion and have all these traits and qualities about you that I think are not necessarily good for you. And a lot of times, even though they might make you feel powerful in the moment, long term, it makes you sort of an asshole. It makes you it makes you less of a person that people want to be around, and more of someone that maybe people fear or they feel like has enough influence that they should. You feel like you are setting yourself up to be superior when in fact all you're doing is making other people feel inferior. And I think that's a huge difference. And it sounds the same at first, but when you think about what that means, it's not that you are demonstrating that other people, it's not that you're demonstrating that you're a good person. You're trying to make other people feel worse. You look up to Jordan Peterson. He loved his honesty and inner will to change the world for the better and help people in it. Yes and no. I think Jordan Peterson's he's kind of a controversial example because I think there's a lot of things that he says that I do agree with. I think there's a lot of things that he claims that has merit behind it. I actually read his, was it Rules to Life, 12 Rules to Life, but I couldn't finish it. I read half of it. And then the second half, I just couldn't finish it because he went so hard into the religious doctrination and based so many arguments on the Bible. I can't take that seriously. And it's not a knock on Christianity. It's a knock on the logic behind basing an argument around a book that is supposedly holy because it's a circular argument. I don't think the book is holy. He does do a lot of baiting. He does have a lot of clickbait titles. He does say certain things that he knows will get a reaction out of people because he wants to have the conversation and get the interaction. But I also think at some level, he truly believes a lot of what he says. It's just that a lot of it's very debatable because when you start basing arguments on a holy text, right? And I use the word holy, it doesn't really allow for a conversation. It doesn't really allow for any sort of discussion about the validity of what you're saying, right? I think that if you're going to make an argument, and this is something I want to talk about too, is the idea of a logical argument, right? I see this all the time and it got brought up a bunch of times, even in that tweet thread. What is a logical argument? A logical argument is one that has established premises and a logical conclusion. He provides a religious guide to acting versus a universal secular one for sure. Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of other people I've read, a lot of the books I've read that I find more helpful, which is why I like Stoicism so much, is that it's not a religious guide. It is a secular guide. It's a universal exploration of truth and good. Hey, what's up, Flawed? How's it going? I agree with you about the Bible references, but specifically his opinions based on scientific paper. Yeah, exactly. He's a psychologist. I mean, he's a psychologist. So he does base a lot of this stuff on evidence. So I think that there's good qualities to take from what he says, and there's stuff that I can disagree with, right? That's the nature of discussion. And that's kind of what I want to do today. I'm going to say my piece. I'm going to give an idea for, everyone here what I think. And again, it's my opinion. I'd like to think that most of my opinions are based on, not entirely science per se, like research studies, but what I've seen anecdotally, what I've experienced, and then thinking about things logically. So as I was saying earlier about the logic, right? A logical argument is one that has established premises and then a logical conclusion or argument. You can challenge that by either challenging the truth or the validity of the premises or challenging the conclusion that was drawn from them. Now, most people, especially on Twitter, are fine with drawing a conclusion logically. They can draw a logical conclusion. The part that they struggle with is that the premise that they have is usually flawed. So a good example of that is, let's use one that I've actually heard Andrew Tate say, women are worse drivers. He believes that because they are women, they're inherently worse drivers. His support for that is, well, every woman I've ever seen is bad at driving. Now, okay, so if we were to break that into a logical argument, right? The conclusion is the easy part. Okay, women are bad at driving. The premises that he's using is one, that women, that he has never seen a good female driver. The other one would be that all women necessarily must be similar to the women that he's met or seen. Now you can see where there's an issue with that, right? It very well is probably true that he feels that every woman he's ever seen drive is not good at it, right? He might feel that way. That is true. I can't argue that premise. I can argue the premise that every woman on earth is similar to a woman he's seen. One, he's living a lifestyle and he's living in certain areas that naturally don't epitomize the vast majority of the world, right? And then there's just no way you could have even met like 10% of the people on earth. Yet you want to draw a conclusion about 50% of the world, if not more. I think there's more women, maybe 54% or something. Like you could see why the logical conclusion doesn't necessarily follow then. So the easiest logical argument is if A, then B, therefore this, right? And then that doesn't hold true in this case. It's just math. So the nice thing about logic, and the reason I have an issue with the way that people use the word logic on Twitter, is that they don't actually want to have a logical conversation. What they want to have is an opinion-based conversation that they will draw some conclusion from and then deny everything else, despite you providing comparable or contradictory evidence and then drawing a different conclusion. They don't want to acknowledge that because logically they're wrong. And so when people use the word logic, it drives me crazy because logic means that there's one of us who has made a better argument and the other person is straight up just not as accurate. And if they can't revise their premise or they can't provide a counter argument, then they're just straight up wrong, mathematically wrong. So I love that one guy who was arguing with me was like, you just don't think logically. I'm like, I've literally established everything about why I reached the conclusion that I did. And I asked you to do the same and you can't. So I don't know. And then he ended up calling me an idiot or something. And I was like, yep, you lost. So if you can't respond with rationale and actually provide some example of what you're saying that makes sense, you probably don't have a point. Yeah, I mean, okay. So same thing for race. Some people will say things like people from every race are all the same because the ones I met did bad things. Yeah. And that's just absolutely, of course, 100% false, right? Like there are definitely cultural types, right? I don't think it's fair to say that everyone is unique in every way. There are cultures, right? Depending on where you're from, depending on how you're raised, there's probably cultural similarities between a lot of people, but very few cultures inherently have qualities that we would find universally wrong or bad. Like there might be some things that are a little bit in the gray area, but across most cultures, it's generally wrong to like murder someone. It's generally wrong to steal things from someone. Now, the major differences I find in culture is mostly in regards to women, which is why a lot of this stuff is a bit controversial. A better version of his claim would be akin to cars that aren't designed for average women, can't see over the hood as well. Yeah, that's I think it's definitely true. But then you'd also have the same argument for shorter men. The amount of adjusting I do to get things in place. Yeah, no, that's tough to. Things aren't designed for everyone. Let's put it that way. But that kind of brings up another point too, is the attitude that so many men have towards women might be more culturally related than anything else. And unfortunately, a lot of the arguments that these people in the sphere of influence of young men are the direction they're going, a lot of it is based somewhat similarly to a certain types of culture's attitude towards men or towards women and men. They tend to come from strictly patriarchal societies, which is not the case, right? Like across the world, we know that. And that same guy was arguing like, oh, every culture, the man is in charge. I'm like, that's actually not true. There are plenty of cultures in which it's a matriarchal society and men do not hold the power in the household. The mother or grandmother tends to run the household. And they've survived very well. Like it's not bad. It's just different. Yeah, what's up, Mambu? How's it going? So my big thing was that the counterexamples I gave were that there are plenty of women in history who have accomplished great things and have changed the world when given the opportunity. It's not that men are inherently more capable than women at doing that. Men have had infinitely more potential and capability to do so, right? They've been given the opportunities to do so. So it's hard to argue that, right? It's hard to argue. And here's the thing is if I were to set that argument up I can see the crazy thing is I can set up his argument better than better than he can. So his argument is that men have accomplished more in the world and more of the I guess the culturally shifting events in the world were done or enacted by men. Therefore, men are superior to women. That was his argument. He didn't set it up like that, but that's essentially what he was saying. Now, I challenged it by saying, well, what about the women who've changed the world? And what about the fact that men have had dozens of times more, like 1,000x times more opportunities to change the world than women have throughout history? Now you don't really have an argument because the women who did get a chance have done very well. And now we're seeing, especially in the West, a greater influx of women into academia and into, government positions, stuff like that. And now they have done many great things, right? There's a ton of scientific discoveries in tech. a ton of art, a ton of stuff that's come out from women because they now have the opportunity and chance to actually demonstrate what they can do. I mean, it's hard to argue with that, right? So if there are clear examples of women doing great things when given the opportunity, then how can you say that men are inherently better because they've done more things? You know, it just doesn't make sense anymore. There's no logical conclusion to that. Now, if he had showed that, oh, well, you know what? I have this evidence that the percentage of women that have accomplished great things given the exact same opportunity versus the percentage of men is lower, then you might have an argument. But that's just not, one, that's not possible to have that kind of data. And two, it doesn't really, again, hold true because you're talking about a tiny sample size versus a large sample size. Check this video. It's somewhat relevant. I will have to probably check that out at a different time unless you want to describe what it is. Yeah, men are smarter stereotyping when women currently outclass men academically. I think, I see, men are smarter stereotype. That's a stereotype. Yeah, I definitely don't think men are smarter per se. I think smart is a word that's very hard to define in and of itself. A lot of people like to reference these studies, and I talked about this in another tweet thread, which also was kind of ridiculous, but that men on average have a higher IQ because of the systematic reviews that they've done, where the men tend to score, I think it's like 4 to 6 points on average higher than women. But again, that doesn't take into account that most IQ tests are academically grounded as well as societally grounded. So they found that, okay, lower income people also score lower on that test. Does that mean across the board that lower income people are less intelligent? No. It means that the test itself is founded or it's based on certain qualities and traits in a person that are more prevalent in people who have higher education. I guarantee I would do much higher on an IQ test than many people who have not gone to the same schooling that I have. It doesn't mean I'm inherently smarter. I don't think I'm that much smarter than most people, but I also know that there's a bit of a bias in those scores when you've been highly educated. It's very rare that people who have no education do well on an IQ test. A ton of people hated Condoleezza Rice because she's the first woman who was a national security advisor and also female secretary of state. Yeah. Oh, it's a character analysis of Uncle Iroh. Yeah. Wild take. You certainly get higher scores than 99% of Twitter people. It's not completely useless. I don't want to say that. No, it's not completely useless. It's an indication. But what I mean to say is that the word smart implies that it should include more than just IQ. There is common sense. There's a lot of other factors to someone being considered smart. And specifically, let me just finish this take before I get into your question, Sheriff Codes. The example that I was arguing about in that tweet thread about IQ tests was literally about high ELO versus low ELO. And this person was baiting me and trying so hard to say that the higher ELO you are, the higher your IQ probably is. And I was like, there's just not a correlation there. It's not equivalent. I know plenty of high ELO players who I will not name it, but I don't think they'd score very high on an IQ test. And I know some low ELO players who probably score very well on an IQ test. I'm low ELO, right? I'm hard stuck gold. I can for sure score higher on an IQ test than most of high ELO challengers. I almost guarantee it. Like, it's just not really equivalent. It's not a measure of IQ. It's a measure of how you approach the game, right? It's just not the same. Okay, so the question, I recently discovered a person that thinks the whole day making plans and goals without actually working on them. For example, this person has written 100, 200 pages of different things as to how to make money or how to do workouts. What can these people do to get out of the dream and start living? I'm similar like him, but I work on my goals 2 to 3 hours. Okay, that's a really good question because I have a lot of friends like that too. And believe me, I'm always on their case about execution. You're not executing. You can sit there and make ideas all day, but until you actually execute on an idea, it's never going to amount to anything. Nobody's going to do the work for you. And so part of the planning, if you're let's say you want to do a project or if you want to start a business, something like that, part of the planning is actually sitting down and mapping out the step-by-step process to get to where you want to be. You know, that has to be part of it. So if you're kind of in that mode, set aside some time when you're doing the goals and the planning and all that to actually plan the activity part of it. And then you just need to execute. Nobody can make you start until you choose to start. That's the hard part. I can push, like my two friends who are artists and they're super into these projects they're doing. They spend all day like, I don't know, like planning out background, designing characters, doing all this stuff like for these movies or games they want to make. I'm like, eventually you have to do something though, and actually execute on it. You actually have to put in the effort of and the risk of putting yourself out there and seeing what happens. Because until you do that, you can plan all day and you'll never know if you're right or wrong. It's an evolving process. That's the actual thing. That's what I've realized in running a business. It's always an evolving process and you won't know until you do it. You won't know until you try it. And you can't correct mistakes until you make them. So it's really, really important at some point to just throw yourself out there and see what happens. I should be honest. IQ is like a modifier. High IQ needs to work less to accomplish the same thing as lower IQ person. Yeah, exactly. I think it's a baseline idea of what your potential could be. There was a study that correlated intelligence with ELO. I would like to see it. I have not read that. And I would really like, if you showed me that study, I guarantee I could pick out at least 10 confounding variables that they're not accounting for that probably interfere with the data result, because it's just, there's too many variables. It's really, really hard to control when you're just measuring IQ versus ELO. It doesn't make sense. The vast majority of high IQ people can't even play League statistically. I mean, yeah, but the problem with League too is there's also a mechanical component to it. How can one get started in my industry? I've been lifting the last 7 years, avid gamer, work in sales for the last 3. Well, first of all, my job is not training gamers, although that's part of it. My job is the physical therapy side. So you can only do what I do if you get the doctorate, you get the degree in actually becoming a physical therapist. And then you have to attain a high level of competency in the field. And then you can start talking to teams and then you can try to get into it. I'll tell you, it's really hard. And I don't know if it's really worth it for most people to try unless it's absolutely what they want to do. It's been, yeah, doctorate required, GGM. I mean, to do specifically what I want to do. If you want to do training, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can get into that. But at the end of the day, like I tell everyone, this is a side job for me. And it's not my main focus of how I make my income. It's just something I love. It's a passion project. I'm an outpatient physical therapist all day, most of the day. That's my day job. I work full time and I see patients in the real world. Like the gaming stuff is just a hobby for me and what I love doing. Controlling what you're doing really helps. Tracking your progress. Yeah. Set measurable goals, right? The same thing applies across all of life because this is how human brains operate. Setting short-term measurable goals that you can attain and then achieve and then move on that all build to the larger goal. That's how we do things well over time and stay on track. Most of high elo players are pretty dumb. I'd agree with that. I think a lot, not dumb. See, again, dumb does not mean a lack of intelligence. Dumb means, in my opinion, well, dumb is its own word. It means you can't speak, but not being smart has more to do with the fact that most high elo players have not spent as much time learning anything outside of the game. They don't have a lot of real world experience. They don't have a lot of understanding about other things, about the world itself. So that's why they're high elo. They've hyper focused their attention and their efforts into a certain task that is not related to most of the other tasks in life. And so they don't know how to microwave something. They don't know how to cook anything. They don't, like, a lot of them really struggle with real world stuff. And it's not that they're stupid. It's that they haven't spent time acquiring those skills. So yeah, it's really to get me emotionally involved, but it's hard and very complex. Yeah, I mean, it's tough, but I'll also tell you that anytime you do something uncomfortable, it's kind of like, this is actually a concept in Stoicism. The more times you do something uncomfortable, the easier that uncomfortable thing becomes to do, right? My example is always like brushing your teeth. When you were a kid, it was not fun to brush your teeth. You did not enjoy it. In fact, you tried to not do it whenever you could. Your parents had to force you to do it. But guess what? The more you did it, the more you realize, one, it's actually good for you. And two, it's not that big of a deal. And so you start to do it habitually. Now it's not hard. It's not hard for any of us as an adult to go and brush our teeth every day. Like that's not something that we struggle with generally, right? You might forget at times or you might, there's all these little things that come up, but like, that's not a struggle that you have as you've gotten used to it. And that's like anything else. Nobody likes to take a cold shower, and there's a lot of health benefits to it. And there's like ways that you can justify doing it. I try to do it every once in a while because it's good to push yourself to do something you don't really want to do. And the more often you do it, the easier it gets. It's a habitual thing that develops in your mind. It's tolerance, right? No offense to streamers, but Tyler 1 and Tarzan would be so fucked in the job market. I mean, yes and no. I feel like they demonstrate enough intelligence and enough understanding about how to go about their business that they probably do well in something. I think they do well in something. They're not completely incompetent outside of League. I don't think that's true. I think I've actually talked to both of them to some degree, but Tarzan more so. I think they're smart, right? And they could do well if they applied themselves to other things. And that's actually what I say to a lot of high-low players. If they were to put that much effort that they put into League into anything else, they'd probably be reasonably good at it. They'd probably be able to get straight A's if they really wanted to. The problem is motivation, and a lot of times they don't have the skills or the habits necessary to do so. I wouldn't go as far. This being good at League shows that you can hyper focus on something with a lot of changing variables and optimize your chances to win. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If average age goes to 30-year-old has vastly different level. So I don't think age is the reason why you won't be good and higher, like when you get older. I don't think that League is a game in which age makes a huge difference, to be honest, minus the fact that as you get older, you're less likely to grind, and it's going to be harder to pick up skills. And if, like TLG mentioned, if you started late, you have way more to catch up on. Your learning curve is going to have to be exponentially faster, which is generally not the case. Kids do learn faster. If you started playing League when you were 14 or 13, you're probably insanely good within a few years. If you started playing League like me in your 30s, you're not going to get insanely good as quickly. You just can't. And you can't just devote enough time to it. So it's definitely not reflexes. Reflexes don't significantly slow until 30s. And even then, your reflexes are not slow enough where I think it makes a massive difference in League. In other games, potentially. But we've seen CSGO players play into their mid-30s. And even if they're not at the top tier pro level anymore, guaranteed half of these guys in CSGO who have played professionally for 10 years and are now retired but still probably play, they could probably still shit on almost any of us, right? Like they're probably still pretty good at the game. Definitely high elo. Do you think that the right way to deinstall League of Legends for being more productive, if I uninstall it for a week and then install it again, it's not the best decision, like a JoJo effect? I think this is an individualized question that you have to determine for yourself. If you find that you're someone who is so addicted to the game that you cannot physically control yourself from playing it if it's installed, and you want to be more productive and play less League, then yes, uninstalling might be just enough of a barrier to you playing that it actually allows for you to have the habits that you want. Ideally, I would say that you needed to develop a healthier relationship with the game in which you can just choose not to play it. And that's really hard. I kind of went through that myself for a long time. I recently stopped playing League as a grind. I'll still play occasionally, but I don't care at all about my rank anymore, and I'm definitely not grinding. I play maybe 2 or 3 games a week. So what got me to stop was realizing that it doesn't matter. Realizing that my rank doesn't matter. Realizing that, look, at the end of the day, my enjoyment of my time and my mental health is probably more important. So there's just not really a reason to do it anymore like I used to. And for the last couple of years, I was grinding League a lot. I played I want to say 800 to 1,000 games last season to try to get to gold on 3 different accounts. And when I look back, was it worth it? Yeah, I got the rank I wanted. I got much better at the game. Is it worth it now? No, it's not worth my time now. So because my situation in life has changed, my actions and my behaviors also have to concordantly change. Yeah, League does not necessarily cause more RSI than other games like CSGO. I mean, than CSGO, yes, but different. RSI is more prevalent in games that are high. I have seen more RSI in League players than a lot of other games, but I think there's a variety of factors there. I think League itself does do that, but there's also the factor that most players in League I've found are less healthy, less in shape than CSGO players, just as a rule. I've noticed that depending on the game you play, there tends to be sort of some specific traits and qualities that these people have in each type of game. A lot of FPS players are actually much more attuned to physical exercise than League players I've met. Just, I don't know, as a population, it's kind of interesting. A lot of CSGO players, stuff like that. But League players also play with higher sensitivity on their mouse, and higher sensitivity can lead to increased RSI because you're moving your wrist a lot more versus using your whole arm. Yeah, exactly, Flawed. That's what I was just saying. Yeah. Most FPS players don't play on high sense, so they don't use as much wrist movement, so they get more shoulder and neck issues that I've seen. There's basically self-binding, which can help. It's one way to deal with that kind of problem. Yeah, so I call that compensatory. Compensatory solutions are good because they take away a lot of the decision making, but they're not optimal, in my opinion, because optimal is you changing your behavior itself, and you changing what motivates you to have those behaviors. That's the optimal. Now, we don't always have to be optimal, but we should at least understand when something is good for us, why it's good for us, and then how do we start to optimize that. It's based. Hold on, I missed something here. Used to spam a ton of games. You do small blocks. You know, you'll find that you actually climb better when you do small blocks. You played about 600 games, still stuck in Plat 4. Yeah, I mean it's tough. They also, the changes that they've made to rank the season have made it so you have to grind even more. It's much harder to win streak now and just climb. Hey, Nate the Mighty, how are you doing? You've been addicted to the grind. Yeah, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, I was super addicted. This is actually my 3.5 year. Now that addiction is kind of broken because of the disillusionment about the game. I'm kind of just done with like that part of it, the grind. Who's the freakazoid? What do you mean by that? So much clicking. Yeah, it's a lot of clicking compared to CS. CS, you see different issues as well because you have to hold buttons down a lot. What do you think are the best ways to prevent and treat RSI? That's actually a very... Oh, I see. Freakazoid is above CS. There's a lot of ways to treat RSI. The tricky thing about RSI is it's not entirely physical. The physical component of it is similar to just any other type of repetitive use injury, meaning that irritation of the tendon, you usually have some nerve irritation. The muscle itself probably needs strengthening. That alone is not enough to treat RSI though, because what RSI really is a combination of a physical malady, a physical impairment with maladaptive psychological stressors. So what I mean by that is your pain pattern might be more related to how you think about your pain than it is entirely just a physical impairment. And that's why I've worked with players, I've worked with people who will have their arm pain kick in the second they put their hands on a mouse and keyboard. That has nothing to do with overuse. Because the second I have them do the exact same position without a mouse and keyboard, they don't feel it. The second they touch the mouse and keyboard, they feel it. So that tells me, okay, this is more of a I don't want to say psychosomatic because that implies that it's not real, but a psychologically influenced pain. Hey, what's up, Maya? A third mod. Yeah, Maya doesn't drop in too often, but she is a mod from way back. All the mods are here. Hello. I see. Freakazoid is yeah. So I wasn't thinking that you were saying that as a player. I think you meant Freakazoid as in the cartoon because I'm really old and that was a cartoon back in the day. I would say the buffest player in LCS is okay. Well, right now active. The buffest player active right now. I gotta say. Revenge or Svenskeren now that he's back. Svenskeren's pretty strong. Yeah, Owner's pretty buff, but he's not in LCS. Acadian? Okay, maybe Acadian. I've never met Acadian in person, so I don't know. But the reason I say Revenge, and this is he's underrated for this. I arm wrestled Revenge at LCS Finals last time, and he's freaking strong. So... I know that from firsthand experience, literally firsthand experience. He kind of hurt my wrist actually. I've had wrist problems ever since, not gonna lie. I've been slowly rehabbing it, but he kind of tweaked something, I think. And he's pretty strong, so. But then yeah, Svenskeren's pretty buff. Yeah, you did help me set up my stream. That's right. Omega 3s do not help with pain, so that's probably something of a placebo. Um, Still, I managed it to be a therapist. Makes me feel good that every person has these kinds of problems. Oh, I mean, I have a lot of problems. You can talk about my problems all day. Uh, Jankos is jacked, yeah. So you're strong, but you can't arm wrestle to save your life. Okay, so arm wrestling is technique for sure, but it's heavily technique based. It is, but you still have to be strong. And the fact is, he's not a technique based. He's not an arm wrestler, right? He's just a guy. I'm just a guy. We don't study arm wrestling, but without technique, it becomes an issue of strength. And I would say that 99% of league players I will beat in an arm wrestling competition, and he's one that I did not. So by that standard, he's pretty freaking strong compared to most league players, right? Okay. So let's get back to the discussion though on positive masculinity. So one of the big things that I try to emphasize in my own life and my approach to life, there's no way I could take down T1, man, is that you have to know who you want to be. Like, you have to have a vision of who you are in the future that you want to be. Are you acting in concordance with what that person would do? Or are you living your life in a way that is not congruent with that person? And I think, although it sounds really simple, it is simple. It's very straightforward. It's very hard to do. Maya, we can maybe have you hop on in a little bit. I think I kind of want to finish this thought first, but in knowing what you want to be, you also have to determine, is that person someone good, or is that person who's not so good? I don't like to use the word evil. Very few of us ever truly think of being evil, but I do think a lot of us need to spend more time thinking about what is good. What does good actually mean? What is a good person? And I talked about this in an earlier conversation on stream about universal good. And that's something I do believe in, is that there is an idea of universal good, because there's generally in any conversation or any decision you have to make, internally whether there's a good option or whether there's a less good option. And a lot of times you can know that, and you can still skew the idea of what you want to do because there's other factors involved, right? Hey, good to see you again, Tea Leaf. Thank you for dropping by. This stream will be recorded, so the VOD will be up for another couple of weeks. Feel free to check it out later, but have a good night. Take care. What I mean is, like, okay, let's say stealing a candy bar, right? We know that that's not a good action, right? That's on the side of not good. But if you are starving and you're, like literally starving, I don't mean just hungry, like starving, and you lost your wallet, you're stuck in a new place, you can't get home, you have nothing, and you stole that candy bar, would that be a good thing, or would that not be a good thing? Now, the objective answer to that is that it's not a good thing, but it's understandable why you did it. Does that make sense? That's what I mean by universal good. The idea of universal morality. So if someone says something, right, like this, all this Andrew Tate stuff, right? The question I had with Sergio, if he's still in here, was that is he a good person? It's okay to be inspired by certain things that he says. It's okay to be inspired by having money, inspired by, oh, he gets all the women he wants, all this stuff. But is he a good person? And I think from the objective morality standpoint, no, he's not a good person. Like, if someone is not a good person, then you should really question what it is about them that you actually want to emulate. Inspiration and emulation are different. I'm inspired by how much money he has. I'm inspired by his ability to, I guess, get female attention. I'm not inspired by who he is as a person. You know what I mean? Like, I could find a dozen other people who are wealthy and get tons of women and are better people. Many pro athletes can do all of that and are not bad people to the same degree. I mean, there's always examples of worse, right? And I think that's one of the big issues too, is that people like to bring up, oh, so-and-so is worse. Fine. But we're not talking about that person. It's irrelevant. We're talking about whether or not this is somebody you actually want to be like, or if it's someone who you want to get closer to becoming. What would you say as an example of him being a bad person? I would say that some of the stuff that he said, and I've watched videos on this stuff, about women, about how to treat women, about how you should treat other people in life. You know, like I don't believe in demonstrating your superiority as an open-ended thing. Like I don't need to tell everyone I'm better than them. I think that's something that will come out through actions, right? I don't need to flex money. I don't need to flex how many women I can talk to, right? That doesn't make any sense. I don't even want to talk about the sex trafficking stuff, because although that is a huge component of why I don't like him, I understand it's alleged and there are no convictions yet. So a lot of people want to not, they want to argue that, well, because he wasn't convicted, because there was no evidence of this stuff yet, that it's not true. The court must finish before you can do it. Yes. Now, I will say that most good people on earth don't have sex trafficking charges, period. Most good people on earth don't have incidents in which they've had sex with minors. And I know they're going to, and then everyone pulls out, well, it wasn't illegal in this country. Yeah, but guess what? He's a U.S. citizen, or he was. Like, you know, that's not okay, because there's a moral implication there that's not a legal implication. So if you can have sex with when you're 22 and you can have sex with someone who's under the age of 18 in another country, but you were raised in the US, where that is not only illegal, but immorally bad, it's morally wrong, and you go to another country and do that because it's legal, you are still, in that example of objective morality, you are still on the immoral side of that. Does that make sense? Legality and morality are not the same thing. Yeah, it's morally wrong for someone at the age of 22 to have sex with a 16-year-old. And that's my opinion, right? You might disagree with me, but if you want to disagree with me, you also have to acknowledge that you are closer to a pedophile than I am. I mean, yeah, bad people do good things. I think there's a lot about what he says that is actually good. There's a lot of stuff he says that is good. That does not make me think he's a good person. That does not make me think that people should emulate him. Female attention is a tough topic for me and others. I don't go out often. I'm introverted, and dating apps make it worse. So I see a video from Tate and I somehow can relate to what he says. It sounds good every time. It's just, so here's my issue, and I'll talk about this. Getting female attention for a lot of people is a struggle because of insecurity. Until you, like, here's the thing. When all these guys who are trying to coach other guys into how to pick up women, what's the number one thing they have in common that they say you need to have? Be confident. Be confident. And they over-exaggerate that confidence with, hey, you need to be an alpha male. You need to be the star of the room. You need to be the highlighted person. Yeah, but you know, like, you don't have to be that. You have to be confident. You have to be truly confident, not outwardly fake confident. And because all of that stuff falls apart when someone gets to know you. And so how would you feel? Like, how happy would you be if you got a bunch of female attention and then every time they started to get to know you, they left because they realized that you're a shallow, insecure person? That's more debilitating in the long term than never ever being able to date someone initially. Because if you can't date someone initially, you can figure out how to get there, right? I can teach you how to get there. We'll talk about this too. I can give some dating advice for sure. You know, I don't think that most guys are giving themselves the credit that they should, right? I think clearly I have some advantages when it comes to talking women, and that I'm being objective here. I'm pretty in shape. I know I'm not ugly, and I do have confidence. But even before that, you know, in high school, I was not what I would consider attractive. I had long hair, I had acne, I had braces, I was super skinny. I was that nerdy, weird kid. I still had a girlfriend because I was true to myself and I was honest with her. And I just basically demonstrated that, hey, I'm a person that you might see yourself having a good time with, uh, in high school. So it was more so, and I believe me, I got shot down a lot of times. The photo reveal, I have to find it. I'm going to see my parents this weekend, so maybe I'll ask my mom to send me a pic. But it's not attractive. The only thing that determines your likelihood to get a partner is how many potential partners you're exposed to. Yes, that's to some degree, yes. But you also have to understand, your approach. And I hate talking about it like this, but it is strategic. And what I mean by that, like anything in life, this is just maybe how I think about things. Everything is strategic. You need to have a plan in terms of, okay, what are traits or qualities I can exhibit that are positive? What are traits or qualities that I can work on that are not so positive, right? A lot of people like to be funny. So being funny is a really easy way to get women to be interested in you. Being like, yeah, exactly. Being funny is like by far the best way to get women to at least interact with you and spend some time with you. Being witty is that's it, right? If you're witty and funny, they're willing to overlook almost everything else. And that's honestly something that, fortunately for me, is like something I've always found kind of intuitive. Is like I've always had funny friends, and I've always found like myself to be sort of the clown in my group, where I make a lot of jokes. But that's also something that you can practice by, watching more stand-up comedy. And when you watch stand-up comedy, it's not about copying their jokes. It's about copying their approach. What is it about stand-up comedians that actually make them funny? It's the fact that they can take a real world example, a real life example of something, scenario, and they'll twist something about it, or they'll highlight something about it that's ironic or interesting. And then that becomes the humor. That becomes the joke. Yo, Ali, nice to see you again. The other mod, the long lost fourth mod. And people have no idea. Being comfortable with yourself and not being, okay, yeah, let's talk about that. So being comfortable with yourself is huge for confidence. So when I say that you need to be confident, it's not that you need to demonstrate confidence. It's that you need to have confidence. And that's really hard. That takes years. That takes a lot of self-reflection, and it takes a lot of work. You have to first be willing to sit in front of a mirror, and not maybe physically, but sometimes that does help, and assess yourself objectively. Like, you need to actually determine, what are the things that I like about myself and what are the things that I'm not proud of about myself, right? Studying how to be funny is like Patrick Bateman. Yeah. But you know what though? That's honestly what people need to do in certain cases. Because I think a lot of people too, when they're a little bit awkward and they try to be too funny, it comes off as forced. And so self-analysis is a really good way to get better at anything. I honestly, I maybe it's just who I am. Maybe I'm a little bit, I don't want to like throw a diagnosis out, but maybe I'm on a little bit of that. I'm neurodivergent, right? I'll put that out there. I have ADHD. I was diagnosed last year. And a lot of times with ADHD is a little bit of on the spectrum type stuff, right? It's a very correlated thing. So I think of things super literally a lot of times. And what helps me the most with skills, or when I feel like I didn't make a good impression, is I try to analyze the situation and understand where it was that I went wrong, or where it was that I said something that I could have worded better. And that's something that I do for work. And it's also translated to something I do in real life. I think about jokes that I've said, and I'm like, yeah, I should have said it this way and it would have been funnier. Yeah. So I would say, let me go all the way back up here. The edgy and dark humor is not for everyone, for sure. And it's okay to understand what it is. So what I would say is understand what it is about the dark and edgy humor that is funny to you, and maybe lean into that, not just saying it to make a point, not just saying it to be the darkest, edgiest person, but figure out what it is that's actually funny about it. Because there is some edgy humor and dark humor that is funny, right? But some of it just crosses the line and you're trying to get shock value. So yeah, so don't be funny to get laid, right? Here's the other thing. How can I appear less desperate? Well, I know it sounds kind of redundant, but just be less desperate. And what I mean by that is don't be desperate for what you want. be confident in who you are and be confident that you're pursuing what you want. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, it's fine. Not everything works out. Desperation is when you feel like you have to get this thing or else everything is doomed, right? Acting out of desperation is not good in any part of your life. Culture to culture, it definitely matters as well. Yeah, cultural differences for sure. Yeah. Not every culture thinks being funny is a great thing either. I'm talking specifically in Western culture, right? In the US, it's very good to be funny. So my ex, she's Korean, and she's like, what's interesting is that being really funny sometimes also comes off as you're not serious. And some women and some people, they really want someone serious as a partner because they want someone they can trust to get things done. And sometimes I'm one of those people, I don't take a lot of things very seriously, or I don't give off the impression that I'm very serious about things. And so it makes sometimes, it made her feel like, hey, you're not taking it seriously and you're just kind of living life willy-nilly, when that's really not the case. So, everyone's different, and you have to know your audience. You have to know the person. And the other thing is, when you were trying to, let's break this into two parts. There's the part where you're actually on a date, but if you're trying to get someone to go on a date with you, you have to give them a presentation essentially that would imply what the advantages of going on a date are, right? Generally, you should not go on a date to find the one. You should go on a date to learn who this person is. And that's a fundamental difference with a lot of guys when they try to ask a woman on a date. They're trying to ask a woman on a date in order to sleep with them or to find their next girlfriend, right? Or their first girlfriend in some cases. And that's always going to set a lot of pressure both on you and on her. And subconsciously, if you have that mindset, you're going to inadvertently say and do things and make decisions that are going to indicate to that person that this is your goal. So if you go into it with I want to get a date in order to get to know you, then your entire date, your entire approach is going to subconsciously and inadvertently lean that way. So something that I found is you definitely don't want to come off too strong when you're asking someone out, but you also don't want to beat around the bush too much. So one thing that my sister taught me that I found is so true actually is make the girl laugh or make her laugh, do something, right? Like get her attention, demonstrate that you have your own interests, demonstrate that you have your own ideas and you're confident in who you are. And then at some point just ask, hey, I really enjoyed getting to know you and I'd like to talk to you more. Could I get your number? And getting a girl's number is so much easier than we think it is as guys. Like I tested this after she told me that, and literally 5 out of 5 times I was able to get a girl's number who I just met, just because I asked. I didn't have to talk to him for more than a couple minutes. Don't troll a park for girls. So again, it goes to intent. Don't try to make it something that you're intending to do. The guys who are like, oh, I'm going to go to a bar, I'm going to pick up a girl tonight. 99% of the time, they're not going to find a girl that night. Unless they're just, looking for the drunkest, most, blacked out, which is not good anyway. You should not do that, right? If I was looking for someone who I want to genuinely pursue in a relationship, I'm not going to do it by finding the most blacked out girl in a bar and getting her to talk to me. That just doesn't seem the approach doesn't align with the overall intent, right? If you're at a park and you see a girl you like, you should try, and this sounds like this is going to give some of the people in here anxiety. You should try just going and talking to her just as a conversation. So baby steps, like anything else. You start by first learning how to approach someone cold. That's it. Don't even try to get a number. Don't worry about the outcome. Your goal is to go and just have a conversation with them. And you can practice this in a lot of ways. Honestly, do this with men even. People have a hard time engaging anyone in conversation, much less a woman, right? Or someone of the opposite gender. They have a hard time with that as it is. Talk to men, So talk to your Uber driver, talk to people in restaurants, talk to the server, try to engage people in conversations in the elevator. Just make it a habit that you will talk to a total stranger and actually get them to engage you in a conversation, not some menial bullshit like, oh, it's raining again, isn't it? That sucks. Yeah, no, that nobody wants to talk about that. Just be like, you gotta, the skill is in identifying an opening that you can have a conversation about. So, for example, I might notice that this gentleman is holding a book. And if it's a book I've read, awesome, even better, right? Yeah, Maya, we have an advantage because we do this for work every day, but it's the same technique, right? In building rapport with patients, it's the same as building rapport with new people. So, for example, I see someone holding a book and I want to engage them in conversation. Okay, let me finish this. I'm going to think, okay, what do I know about that book? A lot of times, if I've read the book, it's super easy. Like, hey, I've read that book. It's really good. Like, how are you liking it so far? And then they'll talk about the book. And then what you want to do is try to get the conversation to go to a point at which you're learning about them. And that's what I mean. The intent of this strategy or this technique is not to get a date. It's not to find a significant other. It's not to get someone to sleep with you. That might be your end goal if that truly is what it is. I'm saying that your intent here just needs to be get to know them. And this is like, I know it sounds transactional. So SD Banta, it sounds so transactional, asking questions in order to get a girl, something that feels not great, but it is transactional because at the end of the day, every interaction that we have with people is at some level transactional, whether we want it to be or not. And so being okay with that is fine. You don't want to make it intentionally transactional. That's the difference. No matter what, any interaction you have with another human being is somewhat transactional. So part of the skill is developing your awareness of intent, right? And I'm not knocking anyone. If you are literally going out to find a woman to try to sleep with you, I'm not knocking that, right? That's not inherently bad. It's more so that you need to understand the consequence of what you're doing. So, if that's a decision you want to make, then you should understand that there are some women who look down on that. And there's some people who look down on that. And if it's something that you think is good for you, then by all means, go ahead and do it, right? I've spent part of my life when I was single doing that, right? In college and all that. But I understand now later in my life that, hey, is that what I actually want? Is that the person I want to be? No. And so I don't do that anymore. Like, I don't see that as my goal. So therefore I don't pursue that as an action. For people like, let's go back to just general suggestion for a lot of the guys who, are trying to talk to women. Do not compliment women at the gym. Yeah, that's a really tough one because you're inherently at a disadvantage there because women at the gym are already on their guard. They don't want to talk to you. They're not there to try to pick up a date unless they are. And there's certain gyms that have that. They're there to get their workout in and not be sexually harassed generally. So you even approaching them is going to put them in a position in which they're expecting to be sexually harassed. So don't do it. Like, unless the opportunity is so prime, like let's say she comes up and talks to you, it's a different story, right? Or if there's an opportunity to kind of to have a casual conversation, like a natural casual conversation, then by all means try it. But definitely do not try to get a number or date at the gym. It's just so your odds are so bad there because it's just like it's just such a terrible situation for them. So let me go back to my point of, okay, so your initial goal in order to get better at talking to new people, especially women, is to first get better at talking to everyone. So practice that part of it. Have conversations, actual meaningful conversations with random strangers as much as you can. And I promise it'll be easier for you to start considering going up and talking to a random girl you actually want to talk to. Yeah, it helps a lot to have similar interests. So I think that's an easier way to go about it for sure. Even if you're tall and attractive, yes. Being tall and attractive actually makes women even more on their guard because they're assuming that you're someone who's used to getting what you want, especially when you talk to girls. And that's going to put them even more on guard if you approach them at the gym. It's just not, don't lean on, oh, I'm hot, so they're going to want to talk to me. That's oftentimes a false impression. And I've seen a lot of guys, especially at music festivals, stuff like that, who are obviously attractive and tall and all this stuff, and they can't get a single girl to dance with them because they're so aggressive in their approach. Not every girl just wants to do that with you just because you're attractive. Like, in a lot of ways, you being attractive is a turn off because they know that you're probably like this with a dozen other girls. And the other thing is, don't be a nice guy. What's up, John? How's it going? And what I mean by that is someone who is nice in the classic, oh, I'm a nice guy, as in I do everything nice. I'm always super polite. I always do everything for the girl. You are actually manipulative and the people who are like that and get upset when they don't get a girl is because they expect, this is the transactional part. They expect that when they are nice, they deserve something back. If you're truly, I think I'm a nice guy in the true sense that I'm generally good to people and I don't expect things back from them. I also don't get mad if I'm nice to a girl and she doesn't want to date me. I don't really give a shit. You're not entitled to that, right? Be a good person. It's a very different thing than being a nice guy. Nice guys get upset when girls don't want to date them because they expected that by holding doors open and being continually nice and listening to them, that this makes them, the girl owes them something. They don't owe you shit. You should be like that just for being a good friend. And if you're a good friend, you wouldn't try to manipulate your friend into dating you. You would be direct. You would be like, the second you knew, hey, I'm attracted to this person, I want to date them, you should just tell them, hey, I know we're friends. I'm actually into you romantically and I want to date you if that's something you're interested in. If not, then you make the determination, are you going to be friends with them continually, or are you going to continue to be friends? And if you are, you're committing to then not try to date them because they said no. If you're not okay with that, then you have to tell them, like, I don't think I can be friends with you because I'm romantically interested and I know that me being friends with you is going to cause both of us stress and drama in the future, and I just think it's better if we don't do that. I told my ex we can be on good terms. I have a good relationship with her. I'm not going to be friends with her. I'm not going to hang out with her. I'm not going to have conversations with her randomly at night. Like, it's just not going to happen, you know? So you have to always understand your intent with things. How am I enjoying single life in comparison to a relationship? I'm really enjoying being single for a lot of reasons. I'm also really missing companionship. So it's not that I miss my ex. I miss having someone in my life that I really care about as an individual more than anyone else. I miss having someone to kind of think about in that sense. I miss having someone care about me in that sense. I do have a dog. My dog, I love my dog. But that's, it's different than a person, right? It's different than having a reciprocal relationship in which you both really try to take care of each other and you know that someone's out there for you. It's a different type of feeling. So let me go back to this because SD Banta, I agree when you say all interaction is transactional, but I think there are two different categories of transactional. First is very manipulative, where it's focused on what do I need to do in order to achieve the results I want. The other is recognizing my basic human needs and I can get that met. Yes. But what if what you want is not inherently something that they don't want? Like, what if what I want out of the transaction is I want to get to know you better? It's still transactional, right? There's something I want, but it's not inherently negative because it's not something I want at the cost of them, at their expense. I think inherently when we think of, I want to get this woman to sleep with me, we think of it as a transactional thing where it's negative for them because the implication is that you just want to sleep with them and then you never want to talk to them or build anything with them after that. I know I have friends who hooked up with some random girl at a party, but then they continued to date and they continued to do something. Now they're in a relationship and even got married. You could argue that wasn't as transactional then, right? I think intent is the big thing. Intent is the most important thing in life. I had a tweet way back. I'm writing a book, by the way, eventually. But one of the things I wanted that I thought about that I think is very true is all that matters in life is intent and execution. You can't have one without the other. And if you're missing one, then you're inherently flawed. Intent and execution. You have to do things well, and you have to have the right reason for doing them. If you can do that, if you can identify both of those things, you're going to be very successful in life because you're going to know what you want and you're going to be able to do the things that get you there. So most people just focus too much on the execution side. So if you find guys easy to talk to, but you don't find girls easy to talk to, it's because you're thinking of them as inherently different types of beings and not just as people. Right? And that has a lot to do with your intent. You're thinking of girls differently than guys because you might have a different intent with them than you do with guys. The other thing is you have to think, am I approaching my interaction with these people differently because they're guys? Am I like making guy-centric jokes and that's why I get along with guys, but then I have nothing when I talk to women? And if that's the case, then you got to understand women better. A lot of times my humor is pretty generalized. I don't joke too differently between guys and girls. It's like, it's a general thing. So I definitely think that a lot of it just has to do with thinking about yourself more and thinking about your intent and thinking about your approach to things. And that's kind of what I said in my last stream, is that you need to constantly evaluate and self-assess yourself. And I think self-reflection is one of the most powerful things we can do as humans. Animals can't do it. Do you think it's normal I stay inside my room at 19, I'm assuming? Others of my age go party every day, meet people in cinemas and all that. I can't enjoy it. It makes me anxious. I don't think it's abnormal. I think I was like that when I was 18, 19. But I also think that you don't need to give yourself anxiety about thinking about doing things you don't want to do. I do think you should try things that you're not comfortable with and seeing if you like it. And if there are things you like about it and things you don't like about it, think about why that's the case, why you feel those things. And that way you'll understand, I do like going to parties. I don't like the rampant alcohol abuse. So maybe I just don't drink at parties and I just try to talk to people. I do enjoy being around people. Yeah. Try to explore. I think it's always good to explore. Yeah, your brothers have girlfriends and I get along with them great. Exactly. You're not seeing them as someone you're trying to actually build a relationship with. You're just seeing them as people. And actually, I find that with a lot of people. When you know someone is off limits, immediately things get so much easier. You know when I got the most attention from women in my life, generally, is when I was not single. Why is that? Because inherently I know that I'm off limits. And so the way I act almost reflects that. It demonstrates that. It creates a lot of self-confidence in me because I know I don't care if she's interested in me or not. I'm just interacting with her as a human. Right? And then, oh man, then girls love that because they're like, oh, he's just such a normal person. He's like confident and like willing to have a conversation and actually just getting to know me and there's no like ulterior motive. That's when they're the most attracted to you. So if you could have that mentality without being in a relationship, you're going to get a lot more attention. Having stricter standards romantically helps you have female friends. Yeah. And that's the other thing. I have a lot of female friends. Like that's another thing is like what helps a lot in being able to talk to women is having actual female friends. Like I have a lot of female friends who I'm not trying to sleep with, you know? And I know a lot of these guys out there, that these coaches like to say like, oh, every guy would sleep with any of their female friends if they tried. I'm like, no, that's just not true. Like there are plenty of women I'm friends with that if they were drunk and came on to me, I'm not going to sleep with them. I'm just like, this is not a good idea, you know? No, I'm not trying to sleep with any of you. You are a friend, Maya. I consider you a friend. You know, like, it's just, I feel like that is like such a, oh, thank you for the sub as well. I appreciate the 3 months. It does make you a friend. Even though you were a friend before. But like, it makes us such animals. And I think in life, we should be doing our best to get away from being closer to animals. We need to acknowledge our animal nature. But as human beings, we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard than that, right? They tell themselves so hard by saying that. Yeah, it's just weird. He got that dog in him. I mean, and the thing is, again, it's like I said, it's all just about knowing yourself and knowing what you want and knowing what you consider. Like, I'm not opposed to people hooking up. Let's get it through like clear. Like, I'm not against people who are in that state. You know, if people are in that state, you know, and I've been there where I just hooked up with girls. I didn't want to date anyone. I was just honest with myself, and I was on. The biggest thing too, I was honest with them. That's another thing. I never had issues with a woman or whatever in college or anything. If I hooked up with them and we didn't go anywhere after that, I never had issues because I was honest with them. The amount of women that straight up asked if at a party or something, like, "Oh, are you going to be serious?" And I would say, "No, I'm not looking for a relationship right now." They wouldn't hook up with me, and I was fine with it. Like, just be honest with them. I had a buddy in college who was also hooking up with a bunch of women. He was a player, but he wouldn't be honest, and he would tell them that he wanted a relationship. He'd tell them he loved them and stuff, and they all hated him. And that's why you're manipulating people. So I promise to all the guys and women, if you're honest with the other person, you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities to sleep with them. But guess what? It's worth it, because the ones who end up still wanting to be with you for that amount of time, whatever, they're not going to be mad at you. Like, you're not going to create problems for yourself in that part of your life. You know, you just have to be honest with people. And yeah, and I think it's a lot of projection when guys think, oh, this guy who has friends, he's friends with all these girls, he must be sleeping with all of them. It's projection. Like, that you can't have a relationship with a woman that doesn't involve sex. I don't really, you don't need that. Yeah, and obviously, yeah, STDs that's a whole different issue. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the moral implications of making people feel negative about their interactions with you. I'm a person who's desperate for specifically romantic attention, not platonic. As a result, I've had to endure 6 relationships over the course of 3 years that all ended poorly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's disrespect of your own body, but it is what it is. I'm not gonna blame people for, I guess, failings. I wouldn't call it failings, but points of weakness. I don't blame people for that, but you need to acknowledge that it's a point of weakness and you need to work on it. So, all right. Anyway, I've been really, really enjoying these streams. I really love talking to you guys and just having conversations about stuff like this. But I do have to get going. Unfortunately, I have to end stream here, and I got to go work with C9 right now. But I really think there's so much to unpack and talk about more. So I definitely want to keep doing these going forward. So yeah, sorry, Maya. Sorry. Next time. How goes the climb? It's not happening. I'm climbing in Wild Rift though. So that's good. Yeah, actually their managers text me, hey, you coming by? I was like, yeah, 5:30. So I got to hop off. Yeah, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'm glad that this kind of stuff is taking off a bit, for my streams. And I really appreciate that people are having genuine conversations and being willing to have, a discussion in good faith, right? Wait, did I do that wrong? Shit. How do I shout out your stream? I'm doing it wrong. Whatever. Okay. Everyone should go drop by Maya's stream as well. Give her a follow. She does stream as well. If you want to do some conversations about this stuff too, give them a female perspective on it. Yeah, Zari, let me know when you want to chat. We can hop on a call. Again, yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate the support for all this stuff. I want to continue having these conversations. This is what I'm realizing. This is actually what I want to do. I want to influence the entire generation of men today to know that you don't have to be an asshole to be a man. And you can be a self-confident, strong male figure without making everyone else feel like shit when they're around you. If anything, it should be the opposite. People should feel better when they're around you, and you can still be true to yourself. Like, I would never consider myself a bitch or like someone who backs down from challenges or adversity. But I also try to make it a point that nobody feels bad because of me being around them. Like, I don't want to make people feel bad ever. That's kind of the opposite of being a leader, in my opinion. But thank you all so much. Tune into Maya's and you guys can keep chatting with her and she'll share her perspective on stuff, which is obviously going to be different. But yeah, I will see you all soon. Hey, what's up, Big Russ, man? I'm about to hop off right now, but yeah, feel free to DM me. Absolutely. So yeah, I'll probably try to stream again either tomorrow or the day after, but I really appreciate the support on this. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.